And on your screen right now is Senator Crapo. We've been telling you that this morning he has announced that he will be supporting the plan. Senator, we just heard Paul Ryan, colleague on the other side of Capitol Hill, a member of the commission, who will not be supporting it. It's an interesting split between the House and the Senate Republicans on the support of this plan. What do you think is happening?
Well, as every one of us have said, this plan has a lot in it that we really are uncomfortable with, but it has a lot in it that's really critical for us to get engaged on for helping to get this country fixed. I actually agree with the comments that Paul Ryan just made about the fact that this plan does not adequately deal with the health care issues and with the entitlement portion of our budget problems. But nothing stops us from moving into that area in addition to what's contained in this plan and dealing with those problems as we move forward. So I believe we've got to take the action necessary to get moving, and that although I got a lot of heartburn with things that are in this plan, I've got even greater heartburn with inaction. The time for gridlock, the time for inaction is past. If we don't take some very bold action now, we're going to see our nation face fiscal difficulties that are going to be much more painful than anything included in this plan.
I read your heartburn quote that you gave to a newspaper a little earlier to our viewers watching the program. What specifically gives you heartburn?
Well, first of all, I would prefer to see much more in terms of reduction in spending. This plan does go a long way toward dealing with the spending problem in Washington, but not far enough. And so a big part of my concern is the reduction in spending. And on the tax policy side, I'd actually like to see even greater reform, though this plan does have very, very significant reform of our tax code.
We have been showing the vote tally as we know it, according to press reports and from statements, and all are suggesting that it's unlikely that the commission will reach the supermajority of 14 that it set for itself to send the plan to Congress. So if that's the case later on this morning, what happens to the work that you've done?
Well, if we do not get to 14, what that means is that there will not be a mandatory vote on this plan with no amendments in the Senate and the House. It does not mean, though, that we won't have this plan before us. It doesn't mean that we won't have a majority of the commission saying to the President, to the Congress, and to the American people that we believe it's time to take this strong action. And frankly, I believe that this plan will still be in play, although it won't be forced to the floor of the House and the Senate, as I would like to see done, so that we can get some immediate action.
Senator, we've been taking calls from the public before you arrived, and I want to continue to do that so you can respond to some of their concerns and comments.
Sure.
Let's take a call from Houston. This is Don, who's an independent. You're on, Don.
Yes, ma'am. If I'm not mistaken, there's no mandatory vote on it anyway, since the Republicans wouldn't vote for the plan after they brought up the idea anyway. And I'm sorry you got heartburn. Try a little lemon juice and water. For one thing, fix our damn trade problem. We're sending all our jobs overseas. Do something about bartering with these pharmaceuticals on these drugs being shipped in that we're paying for, just like they do in the VA. And the banks and whatnot that bankrupted this country with their credit default swaps and their little gimmicks. You need to put a price on them credit default swaps for about $10 a piece. And then we'd be having a surplus like you wouldn't believe.
Thank you. Senator?
Well, let me say, first of all, if the plan were adopted, it would, got 14 votes, it would move to the floor of the Senate and the House under a mandatory agreement by the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader of the Senate. But I actually agree that we need to go further. And as I said, I believe this is a good start, but this is certainly not the end of what we need to do. And one of the very positive things about this plan is the tax reform that is in it that will make us much more competitive as a nation. We'll stop sending our jobs overseas and start making us the economy that we used to be, where capital formation was king. Right now, we're losing capital formation opportunities to other markets around the globe that shouldn't happen because our tax code is so difficult to deal with.
Well, Senator, one of the key parts of that tax reform plan would be to eliminate the mortgage deduction proposal, and it has a big price tag, so I can see the value of it. But our last guest, Mr. Bixby, suggested that the mood for that in Washington would be much diminished because of the concern over the housing market.
Well, actually, I agree that the mortgage deduction should be maintained. And the plan that the Commission has put forward does eliminate all deductions and credits above the line, but it also sets forth options for Congress to add back in some of those deductions that are really beneficial in areas such as the mortgage industry. And so I would guess that even under the Commission's plan that the likelihood is that the mortgage interest deduction would be retained.
And you are aware that places like Canada and Great Britain do not have a mortgage interest deduction?
Yes, and as I indicated, or actually as I believe you said the caller indicated, in the United States the mortgage interest deduction is so strongly liked by the American public and so significant to our housing markets that I believe Congress probably would vote to put it back in. And if it did vote to do that, then what would happen is that the reduction in income tax rates that the plan includes would be adjusted to make room for that mortgage interest deduction to be reinserted into the tax code.
Next call for Senator Mike Crapo, who is a Republican of Idaho and is a member of the President's Deficit Commission, Worthington, Ohio. Bruce is a Republican. You're on, Bruce.
Hey, how you doing? I think that we have to show some unity here. There's just everywhere I see the American people being attacked, and I think that it's time to show some unity, and I think that in the next 2 years we have to show unity. Here in Wilmington, Ohio, we've seen the worst devastation with DHL leaving, and now we have to see some new blood in Ohio. We've got John Kasich, who we love and we respect, and we need to see some unity between Republicans and Democrats. And I think that's what we have to work on. And if I was the international community, I would demand. We owe so much to China and all, and Japanese people. I mean, if I owed that much debt, I would want to see unity between both parties. We've got to get jobs again, and all I've seen is a decline across the board and people refusing to work together. So I'm glad to see America starting to come together again. And thank you for your help, Senator.
Senator, listening to the commission members, there was a number of comments made this week about the unity on the commission, and it sounded like perhaps even a surprise to some of the members. What were the working dynamics like?
Well, as you know, the commission has 18 members, 6 Republicans, 3 senators, and 3 House members, and the same 6 Democrats, 3 senators and 3 House members, and then 6 appointees by the president. And it was a very good working dynamic. We had the normal politics of the House and the Senate with that balanced representation. But we also had people from outside Congress, from the business community, and from different parts of our economy who were able to bring to us a very different dynamic than the type of a gridlock politics that we've seen here in Washington. And I completely agree with the last caller that we need to see some unity. And one of the things that I expect to see later on this morning when this commission votes is bipartisan support for this plan and a majority support for the plan among this commission. And that's one of the things that I think is one of the most positive developments in this entire process. Majority, but not supermajority. That's correct. Now, I'm still hopeful that we'll get to that supermajority, but it is beginning to look like we won't get there. It also, though, is beginning to look like we will get to a bipartisan majority. And I believe that will help us to put this plan on the map. It will be one of the focal points of Congress's efforts in dealing with our fiscal problems, regardless of whether we get that supermajority. Riverside, California, you're on for the Senator. Stephanie, Democrat.
Thank you. Good morning, C-SPAN. The first thing I want to say is, how do we collect our money? Through taxes, which are our revenues. So if you're talking about giving another 7% to the rich, and they're complaining about giving 3%, so in other words, they're supposed to actually pay 39%. They're arguing and fussing about paying 36%. And you're trying to backdoor them and give them 27%. If we collect less revenues And the 3% that they're arguing about now is equivalent to $70 billion a year. So then you want to turn around and you want to tax everyone else for $3 billion here, $20 billion there, and it's still not equivalent to the tax breaks that you're giving the rich people. There is a reason why the Republicans were not in office prior to Bush era for 40 years. Thank you, C-SPAN, and have a nice day.
Senator?
Well, first of all, there is right now going on in the halls of Congress another debate over tax rates. The question as to whether we should raise taxes on anybody or keep taxes the same for everybody. One of the things I like about this plan, this commission plan, though, is it takes, on the tax policy side of the issue, it takes the issue out of this continuous debate we have in the country over tax rates and actually dramatically reduces tax rates across the board for everybody and makes our code much stronger and puts the debate over tax policy into the arena of tax reform and what kind of tax policy should we have to make our economy stronger and more dynamic. And that is one of the things that I believe is one of the biggest strengths of this commission proposal.
Well, specific question from a viewer by email on this. Is there anything in the new proposals that addresses the 48% of Americans that don't pay any federal taxes or even get the earned income credit?
Well, yes, there is. And again, the earned income tax credit is one of those deductions or credits that is on the table to be reinserted into the tax package if the Congress deems it to be appropriate. And I think that's also one that Congress would probably add back in. And so that is taken into strong consideration.
Senator, why did you agree to serve on this commission?
Well, as you may know, I voted against the original establishment of the commission because I thought that it was going to be a vehicle for trying to add a new VAT tax into the tax arena and create two very powerful taxing engines in our system that would be detrimental to our economy. But when the commission was created, I could see that it was going to move forward and that we needed to get engaged in the debate. So when I was asked by our majority leader to be one of the Republican senators serving on it, I agreed to do so. And I was really pleased by the way that the deliberations moved. They did not move toward creating a new taxing engine, but instead they moved toward tax reform and spending reform. And that's exactly what I believe our nation needs.
Next is a call from Birmingham. This is Connie, Independent.
Good morning, C-SPAN. And thank you for giving the public the opportunity to speak out. I have a comment and then I have a question. I am on the unemployment, and yes, I would love to see that be extended, don't get me wrong. And I also own a home, and right now I don't qualify for any programs that would allow me to change the rate of my home. And I am the middle class, but I would not want to see those things pass if it's going to hurt all Americans. Pointing the finger at each other and arguing over, because apparently at some point I'm going to need Medicare. I'm going to, need all these programs that are going to affect me the rest of my life. If we can't get together and sit down and come to some point that where we're going to help all Americans, we've got to start giving back. You keep, raising taxes, you keep cutting here and there. It's still killing the middle class people. And the comment I want to make, or the question is, what plan or action are we going to take in the future? Because we come up with all these plans, are we going to stop the abuse in where they do buy, tarps for cars and, all these things that are so unnecessary for people that are in important positions that are going to stop abusing these funds. I mean, we've got to come to somewhere where we stop doing these things.
I really agree that we need to address the waste, fraud, and abuse on the spending side of the equation in the federal budget. And in fact, that's one of the things that this plan very aggressively deals with. I think it's important for everybody in America as we look at this plan or other ideas to help us deal with our fiscal problems to recognize that inaction is also going to have consequences. We are at a point, in my opinion, where the consequences of inaction are so severe to the middle class and frankly to everybody in America that it's not an option that we should consider. We must take some kind of reform action now, and I believe that this plan gets us well down the road, though not all the way, toward dealing with the two key parts of the types of actions we need to take. First, reform our spending and control it, and second, reform our tax code and make America much more competitive and give us a stronger and more dynamic economy.
On the tax code, Tim Keller wants to circle back on that earlier question about the 48% of Americans who don't pay federal income tax. He wants you specifically to answer it, whether or not you think it's appropriate that so many people pay nothing into the system.
I believe that we should have a tax system in which everybody participates, but I also believe it should be a progressive tax system in which those who have greater capacity share a greater portion of the burden.
Bel Air, Maryland is next. This is Tom, Republican. You're on for Senator Mike Crapo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question and a comment. My question is, does the balance of payments or the money that we owe all these foreign countries like China and I guess Taiwan and other countries because of our imbalance of payments, is that included in the federal deficit? And secondly, now my comment is that it seems like there's just so much hypocrisy in Washington. Of course, there always has been, but it seems like now it's reached a new level with congressmen not paying their taxes. There was a congressman on, I believe, yesterday that made a statement that the federal workers are underpaid, that in private industry that they would make more money. May God smite me with a job like they have. I mean, it just seems like there's no realism. Nobody knows what's going on. Thanks a lot. That's my comment.
Thank you.
With regard to the question about whether the deficit numbers include the obligations we owe to other countries, the answer is yes. That's actually calculated in the national debt, a portion of which we pay out each year as it becomes due, and the interest on that, which is included in the budget numbers. And so all of that is included in these numbers. And I think it would be helpful to explain that right now, that debt is 62% of our gross domestic product. And if we take no action, it's expected to grow to 90% of our GDP by the year 2020 and to about 180% of GDP by the year 2035. These are unsustainable levels. In fact, it's unsustainable at the current levels. And the devastation we will see in our economy if we don't address this mounting debt is the pain that I was talking about earlier that we simply don't have the option to avoid dealing with.
From the political front, one article, opinion piece I read this morning suggested that you, Senator, in your yes vote, might feel some political heat from the anti-tax crowd politically. Are you concerned about that?
Well, obviously, there's concern about all aspects of this plan. As I said earlier, I have heartburn about parts of it, and that's a part of it that I do have heartburn about. But the fact is, we simply have to move forward. And the tax reform in this plan, I think, largely outweighs the potential for utilization of some of that tax revenue to pay down our national debt. So, yeah, that is a big issue. And I do believe that we should not rely on increased taxes to deal with our fiscal problem. The problem in Washington is not that taxes are too low, it's that spending is too high. And another reason that I like this plan is because it's very heavy in focusing on spending in that equation.
Thank you very much for being with us. We'll see you next live on C-SPAN cameras at 9:30 when the commission meets for its final vote.